The ninth Fast and Furious, or F9, looks like a return to form, with over-the-top cars and even more over-the-top stunts.
There's no bridge!
Oh, hell no.
But what die-hard fans are most excited about is the return of director Justin Lin, who directed the third through the sixth films. But why did he leave? And why is he coming back? To answer these questions, let's rewind to 2002, when Justin Lin had just scraped together enough cash to make his first film, Better Luck Tomorrow.
And it's a shoestring budget, $250,000?
$250,000. It was, I had saved up $20,000 cash from all the fellowships and scholarships, and then just work. And then I had 10 credit cards, which amounted to about a little over $100,000. And that was enough to kind of get going.
So it's at Sundance in 2002. It gets picked up and released 2003.
Yep.
And it's not long after that that Universal Pictures comes to you and says, we have this franchise, that 2 of them have been made. None of the stars are attached for the third one. Want to direct it?
Yeah.
And I've heard that you say it was an easy thing to turn down.
I remember watching the first one when I was in film school, and I loved the world. It was like this really kind of, I don't want to say bittersweet, because it was still an enjoyable film, but at the same time I was like, oh God, it's still like the Asian American in the film, they're always, you know, whenever they're there, they have to be around, like, they always have to have pagodas and Buddha statues next to them. So it was years later, and I was shooting in London, and Jeff Kirschenbaum tracked me down in my hotel room, and I just said, no, I'm good. And just kept calling me. He wouldn't stop. Again, this is Tokyo Drift, so like, this is now, you know, they have, you know, geishas and, you know, cars drifting around Buddha statues and stuff like that. I just didn't find that very appealing.
That's in the original script.
In the original script,
the one that
yeah.
was handed to you, yeah.
Yeah, and so he said, hey, why don't you come and meet Stacey Snider, the head of the studio? I give her so much credit because she said, okay, well, what if you can change it? What if I let you do what you want? And I said, okay. And she said, well, you have like, I think 2.5 months or something like that to redo everything. I felt like it was an opportunity to be able to correct something, you know, and to, you know, and it wasn't just me. I remember when we would go and I was trying to interview for tech advisors, and there were a lot of people that were like, no. And that was a sign to me, and I had to find out why. And finally I found Toshi Hayama, and I said, why are you guys so hesitant? And he's like, car guys are kind of off this franchise. And I said, I was so curious, I said, well, why? And they said, well, it's become like the cars, the CG, the scene, and he gave me this list, and so I said, whoa, okay. So I decided to just go and hang out with him, and so we would go to tracks, you know, and really hung out with people who love cars, and they would drift and things like that. And so I felt like, okay, that's part of what I have to do, first of all, before anything else, is to really try to kind of figure out and understand the passion for cars. That was the thing that I think for Tokyo Drift, to try to course correct not even representation, but the idea of making sure that people that love cars will respect this film. So that was the big exercise I found, like, very early on. It got to a point where we're like, well, God, we should get Vin Diesel to show up. And everyone's laughing at us and like, nah, he's done the second one, and we got word that it was impossible. Of course, when you hear impossible, you're like, okay, we got to go get him. And nobody believed us, you know? And even when I got to Vin's house, you know, I remember sitting there by his pool and just talking to him. And it was nothing about him coming in or anything, but we just kind of connected on building stories. And now that I know Vin really well, I realize he's a big Dungeons and Dragons, fan. And so I think, we actually spend so much time now talking about things that's not even in the script. And that's where it all started. It was this 4-hour conversation of talking about the connection. I could see that he was connecting to it. And the great thing was it honestly took us 4 movies. That poolside chat resulted in 4 chapters of Fast and Furious. It really was something that when I sat down and talked with Vin, it took 4 films, and it was also time for me to go. I was lucky enough where, I think when I grew up, it was always about just trying to survive, trying to pay the rent. And I got to a point where that was not the case anymore. So I felt like if I didn't take advantage of that situation, it was not only going to be I was going to regret it, but my big fear was that it was going to hurt the franchise, because then if I'm just doing it just to do it, then that's not good. So it ended up being a great journey. I got to give everybody at Universal so much credit, because even though I left, I would always still get kind of nice messages, and always got a feeling that whenever I wanted to come back, I'm totally welcome, which is great, And then also Vin would just call me, Tyrese. I think he maybe missed the poolside talks, I remember I was in the cutting room for Star Trek in Vancouver, and he calls me, and he's talking to me for 2 hours about Dom, And so I was having fun, but I'm like, wait, I'm trying to cut a movie here, Vin, And so, but that's always been the spirit of kind of who we are, And so, but it was this one trip where I was down in Cape Town in South Africa for Warrior. We were scouting for a show that we have shooting down there, and I was coming back, and it was just a trip where somehow, people recognize me here and there, but that trip, a group of fans recognized me at the airport, Cape Town, talked to me about Fast, and I was like, great, thank you. Johannesburg, London, New York, and LA. I actually think back now, I think that was the trip that for some reason, it was everybody talking about what they what they didn't like, because it was 2 months after that, I woke up and I was like, oh, I think I know what the next chapter is. For me, it started off very simple in that trying to make sure I respect the fans.
Get the e-brake for me, would you, darling?
At the premiere in Cologne, Germany, where I'm sitting there talking to a father and son, and you could see, wow, the dad's entry point was the first Fast and Furious, and the son's entry point is Tokyo Drift. And now that's a generational relationship, And so I feel like if we were always going to repeat ourselves, not even in action, but even not really care about our characters, then we shouldn't be making these movies anymore. And I'm also lucky. I'm with a group of people that will not let me forget either.
Not today.
Is there anything you can tell us about 10 that is, I know you've committed to directing 10, and is it in the writing stages? Is it, where is it?
We're writing, now. I'm actually going to jump on a plane to go see Vin for the first time in a year next week. So it's definitely brewing. Fast 9, F9 is really the first film of the final chapter. So it's actually been very liberating. It's a very different process.
So 10 is not necessarily the last one. It sounds like it most definitely is not the last one.
I would say the last chapter, I think, we have so many characters that my problem is actually real estate, And so to know that, hey, we have F9, but I also now have real estate for 2 more movies to be able to tell this last chapter. It has really, again, it's a very kind of, for me, it's a very fresh way of really kind of crafting what we're going to do.